Every important social change that has ever happened in this country has been motivated in part and propelled by dissent.
So I say down with Goliath, I say down with Goliath, but we must learn, know, write, read. We must kick, bite, yell, scream. We must pray, fast, live, dream, fight, kill, and die free.
I don't think there's ever been a government that liked criticism. I don't think there's ever been a government that likes dissent.
So I was hired to shoot second unit photography in and around the city and the events surrounding the Republican National Convention.
In August of 2004, the Republican National Convention came to New York City. There were 10 days of huge demonstrations here in the city and unfortunately many days of hundreds of arrests. The big march was right up 7th Avenue.
We did see when we got there was a very peacefully assembled group of people.
You have to comply with all rules when you're walking through the streets.
That's
so
it.
when there's a red light, you have to stop.
I do that anyway.
You know, as you can see, these women went to the officer to make sure that they could march. I went across the street to get a wide shot. All of a sudden, police bicycles had us blocked in onto the sidewalk, and then they rolled an orange net around us. So I got a little nervous.
This entire group, from that point to that point, is under arrest.
The police were giving very, very inconsistent commands to the crowd.
Yeah, they were told that they should stay on the sidewalk.
A march route, and I don't believe this is the march route.
The captain instructed them to cross the street to this point.
I'm not going to argue with you as to what's happening. I'm telling you,
just
this
telling you
group
what
is under
happened.
arrest.
I saw a woman with a cane who was flex cuffed. Didn't even appear that any law had been broken. Why are all these people being placed under arrest? I mean, here we are in America, and during the Republican National Convention, and their entire platform is about bringing freedom to the world and securing our freedoms. And here I am as a journalist walking down the street, filming a peaceful protest, and I get deprived of my freedom. I'm starting to lose it a little bit because I'm like, what the f is going on?
Dealing with the police and getting arrested is a very scary experience.
They start to pull us out of the net one at a time, flex cuff our hands behind our backs. I was screaming for them to cut the cuffs off because I was losing feeling in my right hand.
And he and 226 other people ended up in handcuffs and in police custody for days.
That green building right there, that's Pier 57. That's where they had me detained.
Pier 57 is a bus depot. It was used as a huge holding center during the Republican National Convention.
They had outfitted it with these cages, chain link fences with razor wire at the top, and there were these pens. And in each pen there was about 50 people, but there was only seating for 30 people. So the rest of the people were being forced to sit on the ground. There's 50 to 60 people, and the floor is covered in this oily soot. So everyone's filthy. I was there without being charged with anything, without being read my rights, without being allowed to make a phone call, without being allowed to see an attorney. I was locked up 28 and a half hours. I mean, I'll be honest, I was scrambled when I came out of there. I mean, I was really messed up. My partner was shooting videotape. I was shooting film. So he filmed the entire thing.
It was as a result of his videotape that we immediately went to the district attorney's office, asked them to dismiss the charges against Schiller and the other 200 people who had been arrested there. And in early October, the DA's office remarkably agreed to do that.
I'm thankful that this exists because I think without this videotape, there would be 226 people besides myself that would have to be going back to court to fight charges of blocking pedestrian traffic. There was definitely some kind of order from the Bush camp saying, keep the streets clear.
In the Democratic convention, the police there put the demonstrators under a highway overpass blocks and blocks away from the convention center so that no one would ever see the people who were engaged in free speech.
Look, at the Democratic convention,
They had a free speech area that was in a pen. That's just stupid.
The Secret Service got involved, and they decided that they need to have snipers and barbed wire and meshes. Almost nobody came to the demonstration zone because everybody saw pictures on the TV and in the newspapers, and it looked like an internment camp. It really was quite scary.
And that's just the way it's going to be.
In the making of the revolution against the British, in the making of the Constitution, dissent was key at every single turn.
The inhabitants of this country have been branded traitors and rebels, only for complaining of their grievances.
Well, the most famous example of dissent playing a role in achieving social change is the civil rights movement.
Social movements don't make progress by going to court alone or by any other means other than people, in the case of the civil rights movement, taking to the streets, marching, sitting down at lunch counters, insisting that they would not sit in the back of the bus.
No class of men can be content with any deprivation of their rights. The white man's happiness cannot be purchased with the black man's misery.
I think it can also fairly be argued that dissent was responsible for the ultimate withdrawal of the U.S. from Vietnam.
It is always important for people to be able to speak out so that they can influence others and make the change that is necessary.
No more millionaires, no more poverty.
Someday the workers will take control of your city hall.
And when we do, no child will be sacrificed on the altar to profit.
I'm a retired steelworker. Yeah, George Bush was coming in to make a speech.
Shortly after President Bush came into office, we began hearing concern from people that protesters were not able to get close to either the president or the vice president.
When they got to Neville Island, and there were all these people in this giant chain link fence cage like this, I remember very strongly the newsreel footage of people in the concentration camps clinging to the fence like in that same way. You put people in a cage, and other people are going to think they're guilty of something.
Bill adamantly refused to go into the, quote, protest zone.
The police officers came up. The one officer said, "Sir, you'll have to go inside the cage into the free speech zone." And I said, well, that's a contradiction in terms. The whole country is a free speech zone.
Dick Cheney was coming here first time that he was out in public after 9/11. I've got this sign I'd made. I just stood there, you know. I thought, well, you know, people entering the building will see my sign. Came to Evansville as a photographer. I've always felt it was a duty to be an outspoken citizen. And Patrick Henry saying, "Give me liberty or give me death," I was inspired by that. I thought these guys threw it all on the line so that we could have something. I saw the policeman approach me from over this direction.
People were allowed to walk back and forth, but yet John, who had a sign standing silently, was selected out for being removed from this area.
He says, "Well, we've designated a protest zone as being up there." And I said, "Nobody will even see my sign from there."
So he confiscated my sign, and the other officer put handcuffs on me here.
I turned and said, "Well, can I go down where those people are down there in the parking lot?" And that's when he said, "No, arrest the man."
Then he handcuffed me.
Then they cuffed me. They had a police car pull up here.
And behind my back.
The police were standing around, well, what do we charge him with? You know, they were totally in the dark about what to charge me with.
They didn't have the proper papers to write up our arrest.
I know exactly why I'm being asked to leave. It's because I have a sign.
A gentleman named Max called and said, "Thought you would want to know your husband's in prison." And I'm like, "What?"
I felt kind of like a caged animal.
I was frightened.
Well, that's what I was experiencing, was this pacing back and forth.
If you were carrying no sign, or you were carrying a sign supporting the president, you were able to get much closer. There are photos from the day of the event showing people lining the motorcade route with pictures saying, "We love you, George," and otherwise supportive of the president. They are standing much closer than the protest zone. In fact, they are right up to where the president was going in to give his talk.
If they go along parade routes where they don't see anything but support for their positions, he'll think that he's the most popular thing since sliced bread or SUVs.
So he can get off here going 60, 70 mile an hour down to here. He makes a speech, 60, 70 mile an hour, back out again. What else can I do? My only voice was this sign.
Take me to trial. I want to try this. I want to see if a jury will convict me for having a sign.
We plan to fight our battle all peaceably until all citizens are recognized as equals.
This was my statement. It says, vampire utility vehicles, this is your war. Every time I saw a Hummer, I would just want to throw up. It was all about the idea that all of the blood that's being sacrificed in Iraq is actually going into your cars, because I believe it's a war about oil.
She's out on a sidewalk, the sole demonstrator in front of a Hummer dealership. She's the only protester who shows up.
The next thing I knew, I looked up, and there were a group of police on the sidewalk coming towards me.
The police tell her she's blocking the sidewalk.
I was like, are you crazy? There's no traffic here. You're like just a bald-faced lie. And he said, okay, cuff her. I wasn't there to cause trouble. I was kind of on the verge of tears. I was angry and sad and really, I was kind of demoralized. I guess I had taken for granted that you could stand outside with a sign and say what you felt.
My love is attacking these guys, from the bottom up.
We're just trying to express ourselves about something that's very important.
It takes a terrible tragedy, the biggest natural disaster in American history, for there also to be a crack in their facade.
It's like we can't even wait around for politicians anymore. We're just going to go represent ourselves and let them know that this is unacceptable.
We're going to put them up. We're going to start downtown, come up through Echo Park and into Silver Lake where we live, and hopefully we'll have all 25 up by the time we get home.
And they see another one, the next time they stop for a red light, they see another one.
We think it's important to go out and put your politics on the wall.
Yeah, I've been arrested a few times, and our people have been arrested, because it's not just me, there are thousands of volunteers. I don't expect to get into trouble. It's not about getting into trouble. We're already in trouble.
My daughter asked me why would I go out and do this at night, and I answered my daughter I felt strongly that the idea that we should stop and think about what is it that our leaders are doing in our name.
I've been living in New Orleans, so I called Robbie and he's like, I got a new poster, New Orleans is in it, you gotta come to the poster.
I mean, we're here, we're landed in LA because of Hurricane Katrina. A lot of people we know have been completely screwed over, including ourselves. I mean, we're homeless right now as well.
You have to pay for space if you want to put anything up these days.
Nasty.
And space is free, so it's a bunch of BS.
We need people who are driving along to go, what the hell is that? And if they do that, that's all I ask.
The aspect of it that really clicks with me is the idea of freedom of speech and the idea that it's the power of the people.
I was working for FEMA at the time, and we were definitely interested in going and seeing the president speak, sort of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But neither of us are Bush supporters.
The president has clearly made a conscious decision that he doesn't ever want to be exposed to people who disagree with him.
Our intention was to not be added to the throngs of supporters that you usually see him surrounded by.
Upon entering the event, they took off their outer shirts to reveal that they were wearing T-shirts.
That's the front of each T-shirt.
White House officials quickly came up to them, told them that they had to put their outer shirts back on, that they had to hide their dissenting T-shirts, or else they would be arrested.
They asked him to take it off, and he wouldn't. Now, it's possible that he did not look good in it. Many people do not look good in their T-shirts and should be arrested. This was just taking the fashion police to a whole new dimension.
Hey, look, the T-shirt came around because it's easier than carrying a sign. And because we're getting very lazy. And the idea of I'm going to have to paint the sign, they're going to hold the sign up, and this way I just wear the sign.
We hadn't done anything wrong, so we were let out in handcuffs.
It was a pivotal moment in life when you're escorted out of a July 4th celebration while patriotic music is playing in the background, and all you've done is exercise your constitutional rights.
I was very much near tears because I was just shocked that this small act, which we felt we were totally in the right for having gone through with, was resulting in so many negative impacts for us. It was the same for us financially as if I had been fired.
After they were arrested and the district attorney and the police chief heard about the arrest was vacated and the Charleston City Council passed a resolution apologizing to the ranks. The federal government, which is the people who ordered the arrest, have never apologized. Indeed, they've defended their actions.
It's a citizen's role to control the government. It's not the government's role to suppress its citizens.
You shouldn't only be able to say, I like the president. You should also be able to say, I dislike the president.
Freedom is between the mind and the soul. It's between the lock and the load, between the zeal of the young and the patience of the old. I was asked to come and do Russell Simmons' show on HBO Def Poetry Jam. And I wanted to talk about something that I thought maybe wouldn't be talked about if I didn't talk about it. That's why I am not dangerous, I am danger. I am not angry, I am anger. I am abominable stress, idiotic, relentless, I'm a breath of... 6 days after my episode aired, 6 days or so, 4 FBI agents came to my mother-in-law's house looking for me and asked if my poetry was anti-American or un-American. It was a new experience for me. I'm not in the habit of FBI coming to the house, right?
We know that they've been investigating him, looking into where he lived, where he's vacationing. We know that they've gone to his boss. We know that they are trying to find out everything that he's ever taught in his class.
I live in America. My daughters live in America. Nobody wants to see America fall into the ocean and fall away. This is not my investment. The first thing I have to do when I see an evil act, I have to at least feel bad about it, which sometimes is a very difficult thing because we're so inundated with so much information, so much images of tyranny and poverty and things. It's for the protection of one's heart, they may callous it because who could care that much? You know, who could care every day, all the time, right? But it's the discipline of keeping the heart soft and to the plight of the people. And then if one has the ability, then they should speak in order to try to help those people or to speak out against tyranny and oppression. And then if one can actually do something and they can change it with their hands, and they should, then they're obligated, and it is a dishonor not to do so.
They're doing what governments have done from time immemorial, which is they want to shut up people who criticize them. They want to shut up people who are making it difficult for them to do the things they want to do.
So what can they do with a man with a heart like Turner, a mind like Douglas, a mouth like Malcolm, and a
They
voice
thought
like
that they could intimidate Amir into keeping quiet, and they were wrong. What they've done, in fact, is they've spread his message.
To try to silence me is to try to silence your fire alarm, hoping that your house won't burn down. I'm a rape victim with her gun cocked to his cock, bang, bang, cock. Now what? I am Sitting Bull with Colonel Custer's scalp in my hands.
Shall we give up our homes, our country, everything that is dear and sacred to us without a struggle?
Ever since I was a kid, I just always felt the unfairness of a lot of things.
I haven't been involved in protest very much in my life. If I had a problem with the way things were happening in the world, that the best thing to do would be to try to create what I want rather than fight against what I don't want.
We grow food and we sell it sliding scale at a farm stand once a week.
I was in the Marines during the first Gulf War. The reason that I joined the Marines was because I believed that there were values that we needed to protect. So this is Kenza, and this is, come here, Heba. This is Heba. We decided that we were going to have a community picket to draw attention to the war profiteers and the real reasons of why we were going to war. Like SSA and APL, the companies that were at the Port of Oakland.
I felt like I needed to be there. I just felt like I can't not add my voice to the group that's saying we don't want war, we don't want this war. I went with a couple of other friends, and it was very early in the morning, around 5 or something, 5:30.
We were going to have a peaceful community picket where we're just going to, the typical picket, walk around in circle, carry signs.
And we're basically marching in the entrance to one of the companies picketing, and it had gotten light, and I started to hear and see some indications that the police had arrived. Me and my friend who I was with, we were talking about what we wanted to do, and we decided we wanted to leave because we weren't interested in obstructing the police in any way, and so we were marching for another minute, and all of a sudden I turned around and my friend was gone. At that point, that's the first time I saw them use any of their weapons. And so they formed a line, and we started walking up this road. They didn't communicate with us at all.
The line of motorcycle police officers pushed forward right up to us, and then a line of police officers with shotguns took positions right behind the motorcycle police officers, and that's when a lot of us turned and started to run out this direction. I felt something hit me right in the back of my calf muscle here, and I fell to the ground.
We arrived at the intersection of Maritime and 7th Street. The police came up again rather rapidly and formed a line and kneeled down and started shooting at us. So I turned around to run, and that's when I got shot. It was extremely painful, but I was also terrified of getting shot again because they kept advancing on us. And so I was kind of, at first, it's like I went into kind of a animal state of mind. Like, I can't even describe it, but I started to try to look for a place to hide. I could tell right away that I was very badly injured. It's that moment of truth when you're like, okay, my life is not going to be the same from this point on.
As this map graphically shows, the vast majority of people got shot in the back.
Got hit by the tear gas.
What happened?
I don't know, I'm standing there, I'm a worker ready to get through, and I got hit by tear gas.
Oh, man. And then these are wooden bullets, and it looks like they're shot out of this tube because it says multiple wooden baton shells. And so these two must really pack a punch.
As we found, they were firing these things directly at us. And it says right there on the canister,
Do not fire directly at persons, as serious injury or death may result.
The ER nurse, she asked me if I wanted to make a report. The first police officer who arrived started asking me questions, and then right away he said, "Oh, I can't take this report." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because I was there." And so that was really upsetting, because here I was, like, right across, just talking to this person, and I'm thinking, this guy maybe is the one who shot me.
There is a use for these weapons instead of deadly force as someone's coming at a police officer with a knife. But here it was being used for crowd dispersal, and that was just completely wrong.
When they were finished, at least 60 people were shot. They also shot 9 of the longshoremen who were working there.
no one ever expected that we were going to be shot at.
I mean, it's very difficult emotionally to think that you might lose your leg.
Because all this skin died, so it was like she had no skin there.
They removed the dead tissue and the skin, and so that was about that much. It basically felt like having my skin ripped off, but I became something other than a human being during that time period, basically. I mean, I didn't have the same faculty of being able to think and understand and deal with things because I was out of my mind with fear and pain.
That operation has had limited success.
It's not particularly pretty. I just am glad I have a leg.
These weapons actually did accomplish terrorizing people to the point where they were very reluctant to engage in future demonstrations.
Because for me, being in a crowd with police there is very scary. It's very effective, their technique of attacking us, because I won't be participating in protests anymore. And And I know a lot of my friends who saw what happened to me, they aren't going to be either.
Intimidation is key, and harassment are key to suppressing dissent.
If we in this country allow the police to intimidate people from going out on the street and from engaging in protest, we're going to silence dissent. And that is something that would be a disaster for this country.
A lot of us that were attacked that day have a huge amount of anxiety around protesting and speaking out. I get anxious before a protest. I can't sleep for a week, up to a week before, and just have to fight through it because it's important to do it.
We need peaceful warriors, people who had another way of making social and political change. There's something to that, having them on the streets looking at us going, what the hell are you doing?
We took away the ability of the police to surround a crowd, trying to promote managing crowds, not inhibiting crowds. A spontaneous demonstration is just that. You don't need a permit for a spontaneous demonstration. I would say talk to your local legislators, talk to your other citizen associations, and work with people to try to have this kind of landmark legislation be put in place all over the country.
Insist on your right to express yourself, to say what you believe, and if necessary, protect yourself legally and otherwise if people harass you and intimidate.
I was shot myself at the People's Park demonstration in Berkeley in 1969, and we had promises that this would never happen again, and then it did.
I think it's more important now that we continue to stand up for our rights. If we don't, we're going to lose them.
The most important part of freedom is it's like a muscle. If you don't exercise it, it atrophies.
You have to keep struggling generation after generation, event after event, protest after protest, because there's always people out there who want to take your First Amendment rights away, and unless you show that you're not going to let them get taken away, they will be taken away.
And the innocents on death row is probably in the same proportion as the criminals in black robes that smack gavels, that crack domes, that smack gavels, that smash homes. Justice is somewhere between reading sad poems and 40 ounces of gasoline crashed through the windows. Justice is between plans and action, between writing letters to congressmen and clapping at captain, between raising legal defense funds and putting a gun on the bailiff and taking a judge captive. It is between prayer and fasting, between burning and blasting. Freedom is between the mind and the soul. It's between the lock and the load, between the zeal of the young and the patience of the old. Freedom is between the finger and the trigger. It's between the page and the pen, between the grenade and the pen, between righteous anger and keeping one in the chamber. So what can they do with a man with a heart like Turner, a mind like Douglas, a mouth like Malcolm, and a voice like Chris? That's why I am not dangerous, I am danger. I am not angry, I am anger. I am abominable stress, idiotic relentless. I'm a breath of vengeance, I'm a death sentence. I'm forsaking repentance to the beast and its henchmen.